Hello, everyone. I want to start with just a little note that I have a cold and may hopefully you can hear my voice okay, and I excuse myself in advance if I need to grab a tissue or if I sneeze or cough. But I'm happy to be here with you, and I want to begin with a frame about this week. Many of us were elated on Monday with the release of the hostages. And I celebrated Simchat Torah Monday night, and it was a remarkable space after the news on Monday. And so there's this opening, right? Maybe an opening of the heart, and maybe even a bit of a forgetting. And then we've seen the news throughout the week, which has not been as promising, perhaps, as that first release on Monday. So what I'd like to have us focus on today is that exact practice, right, between the opening and the possibility and the fear, perhaps, and the shutting down. I want to begin with my colleague, my IJS colleague, Rabbi Sam Feinsmith, who put together an extraordinary teaching this week on Parashat Breshit, on the words Breshit bara Elohim, in the beginning of God's creating, the very first three words of the Torah. And it's a teaching of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov by his student Rabbi Nassim Sternhartz. There are just a couple of pieces that I want to presence. And one of them is he talks a lot about the smashing of the tablets, that Moses smashes the tablets after he comes down from the mountain and sees people around this golden calf. And he talks about the smashing of the tablets as an opportunity to begin again, not as destruction, but as an opportunity to forget and begin again. And I was thinking about the shofar blast, which breaks us into awakeness and shatters where we've been and gives us a new opportunity to begin again. And then we go through this cycle of the high holidays where we experience the birth of creation on Rosh Hashanah, and we go through the cycle of 10 days of teshuvah and coming back to self. And through Sukkot, and then Simchat Torah, where we have this incredible, incredible joy. And that is literally the moment of completing and beginning. So Sukkot also celebrates the harvest. It is the harvest festival. And while we may not be harvesting anything locally, we may have already seen our harvests a little bit earlier in the season. It's also the time of planting the grain, planting the wheat and the barley. And so as we prepare for Shabbat Breshit, which is tomorrow, I want to first presence one teaching that we read, that some congregations read on Yom Kippur, from Deuteronomy chapter 30, which in verse 6 says that we are to circumcise our hearts. What I want to acknowledge is that our hearts have a protective covering, just like all of our tissues do. That's how they stay in place. And we are told that we are to harden our hearts no more. We are literally to circumcise them and peel away that hardness. So as we move into Shabbat Breshit, I want to just presence a couple of visuals. Let's see if you can see these. I hope that you can. These are seeds that I have collected over the years from plants that I have planted. And if you look here, this is broccoli. Look how tiny these seeds are, right? Super, super tiny. This one more obviously. Well, let's see if I can get out of the glare. These are watermelon seeds. We see these a lot. And something very large, which I did not plant, a chestnut. You may not be able to hear the rattling of the nut inside. All of these seeds have a protective coating, and the protective coating is hard. That's what keeps the juice of life inside. And yet we plant these seeds in the ground in the dark. We put them into the dark, and we water them, and we give them warmth and sunlight from above, even though it's dark. What happens is that the shell of these seeds, no matter what the size, breaks open, and the possibility of extraordinary life comes through. So with that, I'd like to begin our meditation for today. Find your seat. Release your spine up from your buttocks as if it is a sprout coming from the stability of your pelvic girdle, deep, 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 rooting you to the ground. Feel your legs. Another extension out of the seed, pushing downward into the earth. And as you push downward, notice how your hips and your spine are able to release higher up, even still. Breathe in the sunshine, or see the sunshine warming you. Relax your shoulders. Notice the buds and branches that are your arms. Perhaps extend them out into space if you feel inclined to receive that sun, that light, that warmth. To be held. Notice your mind. The mind, like the body, opens and shuts. Opens and shuts. Where is your mind right now? Is it in need of opening? Is it needing care in its sense of being shut? Can you bring the kindness of beginnings to where you are in your mind? Where is your soul? Think of soul as fluid, enlivening each of our tissues, our hearts, our minds. Is your soul willing to receive light? Are you feeling receptive to new beginnings? Is there a forgetting that would help you to begin again? And your body, is it open or shut? Allowing new life to penetrate so that the seed that you are can grow. Is it holding, protecting, defending? Feel the seed that you are. Acknowledge the places of protection that you have built around yourself or that have been built into your very structure. Where do these protections support you? Where do they prevent you from beginning again and from welcoming in the possibility of life? We'll take some silent time with this. With the kindness that perhaps some of those protective coverings need to go under the soil and be nourished gently before they too are ready to sprout. Spend time with your openness and your openings. Spend time with your closings. We'll reconnect in a while. as we get ready to close this moment together, I invite you to acknowledge your openings, those that are within you physiologically, those that are intentional in offering out, in receiving in. In healing. And I invite you to acknowledge your closings physiologically and the ones that you have created from uncertainty, for protection, from hurt. And to take with you what might be yours to plant in this season of planting, to nourish through the winter, so that perhaps the hard covering can give way to yet a new birth, a new opening. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. And thank you so much, as always, Robin, for beautiful practice to lead us into Shabbat. And let's seal the practice as we do by creating a minyan of support for those who are mourning or observing a yard site, or if it's your custom to join in the Mourner's Kaddish. Thanks to Harry for sharing the words of the Mourner's Kaddish on the screen. You can put the name or names of anyone you are honoring today in the chat now or after you recite Kaddish. And if you're joining me, please rise in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabba, Yamad,
Yibrak, Ute, V'Amlichmach, Ute,
Chayom,
Yom
Yedachol Ket Yisrael, Agala, Uvizman Karev.
Amen.
Yehei Shmei Rabba, Rabba, Maya, Barak, Barak, Tadar, Ramam, Vishnasei, Tadar, Vitalel, Vitalel, Shmei, Ba'ela, Mikol,
Lekol V'Shirata,
Ushbekata, V'Nechemata, V'Amiran, V'Amam, V'Amir,
Hey Shlom,
Yehei Shlama Rabba,
Israel,
Chaim Olim, Ko Yisrael,
Shalom Bimruma,
Oseh Shalom
Shalom,
B'Mimah, Ko
Leinu
Yaseh
V'Yom Ko
Shalom,
Yeshua, Ko
El,
Yoshua, Imru,
Yaseh
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Oh, your faith may fail, Vimru. Amen. Amen.
Thanks, friends, for joining us today. I want to wish everyone a sweet, restorative Shabbat Bereshit. And I want to thank our teacher today, Rabbi Robin Damsky, for bringing that juncture of the Jewish year to life in our practice today. And thanks, Harry, once again for holding our text space today. As I mentioned at the outset, I'll be away for the next 4 weeks, and look forward to rejoining you when I'm back. And everyone will be in most excellent hands with my colleagues hosting and with all the wonderful teachers that are lined up to be teaching next week, starting with Rabbi Miriam Margles on Monday, who's kindly will be hosting and leading on Monday. And with that, I also want to invite everyone to stick around for our post meditation schmooze with Rabbi Robin Damsky. If you have a question you'd like to ask Robin about today's beautiful teaching and practice, please put it in the chat. We'll keep an eye out for that. Try to work the questions in, and also, of course, as always, take a moment if you'd like to share any reflections on your experience with the sit today. Well, I went to a pretty deep place there, Robin. Thank you. Really wonderful way to end this week. And I really appreciate, being an urbanite these days, and not even a very good houseplant keeper, I'll admit, to bring attention to the agricultural cycle and the idea of planting a seed right now. And I loved the idea of planting it in the darkness of the dirt and kind of turning it over, I guess, right? This sort of sense of like not knowing what's going to happen. I will admit that my little monkey mind then went to planning. Maybe I can plant some bulbs in the tree wells outside my door, and what would that look like? And then I came back. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I know you grew up in urbanite. So one of the things I do love about this juncture of the Jewish year, especially with Simchat Torah and the end of the Torah reading cycle and starting all over again with one that actually is so earth-based and so embodied as Parshat Breshit, is this sense of, there are endings and beginnings, but are there really? Is it all really one, right? And it captures these two kind of dimensions of the Jewish way of being in the world, one of which is a linear, living in linear time. Like we flipped a page of the calendar. Now it's 5786. It's a new year, right? And then there'll be, God willing, another new year. But there's also the circularity and timelessness of it. So I guess I wanted to invite you to speak about that, that our practice, one of the reasons we do this practice is to actually have the lived experience of time is passing. We have a start and end. And, today we sat in silence for whatever, 5, 7, 10 minutes. So, there's a beginning, middle, and end, and we do this conversation. But actually, there's, if for me, when we do it right, I have this moment where time is suspended in a sense.
Yes.
And so, what do you think about that?
So there's a lot in there. I want to pause for a second and say, in September, my dad turned 92. And
Can I hurry?
Thank you. Yeah. And so I said to him, so how does it feel to be 92, right? And that's like the joke, because it's a day after the last birthday, and we may not necessarily notice distinction, or we might.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, you talked about turning a page in the calendar, and it's also, we walk outside and we see the first frost when we breathe out, right? Or we see the first green on the trees, which I think you talked with me about in a meditation that we were on together a few months back, and the beauty of that fresh green. And so there are ways to mark change. And there also is that this is it, right? There's nothing else. This moment is it. That's all we have, is this very moment. Oh, and that's gone, and now there's this moment.
Mm-hmm.
So the toggling back and forth, which we all do all the time, waking up in the morning and making the coffee, or doing the morning practice of yoga, or whatever our morning practice is, and getting on the subway, or driving to work, or walking to our laptop if we work at home, or whatever, seeing to children, seeing to other family members. So there are all those ways that we mark time, even if we're not necessarily aware that we're doing that. And the opportunity to simply hold, whether that's through exhaling or inhaling, or allowing our attention to settle on something, a sound, a vision, a closed eye of light, whatever it is, brings us back to the fact that it's all here. It's all this minute. It's all right here. And I think that that is perhaps the biggest delight and power in the practice is that all of the distinctions, all of the openings and closings that I make up, some of them, right, physiological, many of them in my mind, in my body, in my heart,
Mm-hmm.
at a certain point, it's just part of this whole, we could say tohu vavohu, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
has less distinction. And then the 7 days of creation are all about those distinctions. But it doesn't necessarily have to feel like chaos. It can simply feel like, right, remembering.
I like that very much. That actually is a good segue into Rana's question in the or Rona. I'm not sure if it's Rana or Rona. Let me know.
It's Rana.
Oh, thanks, Rana.
I think it's Rana.
Okay. So Rana wrote, I love the image of opening and appreciate the importance of forgetting. I let go of whatever no longer serves me. I also know that the broken tablets were not cast away, perhaps because they remind us of our broken places and that the healing and growth happens over a long period of time. Here's the question, is there some value in remembering where we came from and who we are so that we might have a guidepost for our journey? I think that's kind of a
And I
leading
love that.
question there. Yeah, go ahead.
I love that, Rana, because that's exactly when I was doing the study with my chavruta, Rachel Hertzman, this week. That was one of the thoughts that came up to me. What about the power of memory? And what about learning from experience? And what about our ancestors? So I think the question maybe is, what are we taking? And when does carrying our history with us inform us for good? And when does it shut us down, or when does it create patterns that don't serve us? That's a delicate balance, and I think that's the balance we walk all the time. When do I pull out this message from the past because I need to learn from it?
Mm-hmm.
And when am I pulling out this message from the past because I'm afraid to move forward?
Hmm. So what's the criteria for that, would you say? I mean, it's interesting. I mean, like so much of what we're talking about here is really about holding paradox,
Yeah,
right. What seems like two irreconcilable realities that can both be true at the same time,
yeah,
which I love and which I always think, well, that really kind of you're onto something when you notice a paradox
yeah.
like this. And it's also in that passage about Amalek, about remember what Amalek did to you, and when you get to the land, remember it, and wipe out the
And
memory.
wipe it out. Remember it and forget
Don't
it
forget to wipe out
simultaneously.
the memory, right?
Right.
So it's about what to remember, what to let go of. So what's the criteria that you're using there, right, in terms
That's a
of?
great question. And I think that sometimes we have the savvy to have that meta awareness where we can
Mhm.
acknowledge, oh, I'm holding back because of something I learned, or because of something that maybe somehow in, my ancestral DNA or some epigenetic something. And it's time for me to maybe take note of that. I had a teacher a long time ago who said, when somebody gives you some feedback, if it doesn't fit, just like, put it down. And he said, if you find yourself getting the same piece of feedback like 3 times, and you've got this little file and there's 3 of them, it's like, oh, it's time to take that file out and say, what's happening here? So maybe that's one of the criteria is this something that keeps coming up for us again and again and again? And is it limiting us? I think that's another criterion. Am I being limited by this? Or
Mhm.
am I in a space where it is giving me the possibility to reach out, to touch, to care, to help others to grow, to help myself to grow? I think those are some of the criteria. And I'm going to pull out the chestnut only because it's large enough, I think, for people to see more easily than the other seeds. And I can hear the nut inside. It's separated from the shell. We have a shell, right? Each of our vessels, each of our blood vessels, each of our muscles, each of our bones, all of our organs, there's a protective covering.
Mhm.
But yet we plant this in the ground, and that shell must, if we're going to get a chestnut tree, that shell absolutely must crack open. So, when does the shell protect us and when does the shell keep us from growing?
These are the questions. Yeah, it's a lot of wisdom in what you just said, Robin, I think. And and at the same time, I'm thinking that, like we don't, there's no formula, right?
Right.
What we're positing is that when that question arises about what we're remembering, what we're letting go of, um, and there's some beautiful observations in the chat about um, weaving together memories in a way that that serves, I will say, like sacred ends in some way. The assumption or hypothesis, I guess, is that we each are imbued with the ability to discern. It is really a question, an art of discernment, right? About what is to be, what we carry along and what we let go of. Someone mentioned in the chat as well about intergenerational trauma, epigenetic trauma, and being aware of that, and whether, since we're just, through the so-called penitential season 2, thinking about um, forgiveness and remembering and forgiveness, and that our approach generally as Jews is not forgive and forget, but remember and forgive in some way, right? It's not like we're negating the past,
Right.
but we're kind of transmuting the past, really, right?
Right.
We're not denying that it happened.
Right.
But we're finding a new way to relate to the past, maybe, and that's and that we can grow from it. Maybe the crack that whatever the trauma or
Yeah.
the hurt or pain caused can actually give birth to something new. And that's where I think, like, this was very much a sit today about a lived experience of hopefulness. I think that's how I
Yeah.
experienced it anyway.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's critical. And getting back to the ark that holds the whole tablets and the broken tablets.
Mm-hmm.
Again, according to Rabbi Nachman and Reb Nassan, the broken tablets remind us that we have the opportunity to begin again, that we have the opportunity to forget where we may have missed the mark. And not forget in a way like, oh, so I can do it again, but forget in terms of the scar that we hold, the self-judgment perhaps that we hold for making that mistake, for being human, for being, an unfolding seed. That
Mm-hmm.
in the unfolding, you know, I'm looking out my window at these gorgeous trees. Many of them still have leaves. That one over there is losing most of its leaves. Colors are beginning to change. And yet we know that in the beauty of nature, there are some plants that crowd out other plants. And there are some plants that parasite and literally grow around and destroy other plants.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, nature is quite symbiotic, but it too has its ability to be out of balance. And part of our work, I think, in the recognition of the seed is, when does my seed need to be trimmed, right? When do I need pruning? When does my seed need support? Do I need a stake to give myself the power to have something to lean on in the vulnerable place so that I can really establish myself? So much, so much, and it's all possibility. So much possibility.
Well, that's a good place to leave it. We're at time, but Robin, thank you. What a wonderful way to end the week. As you said, that was full of, hopefulness and joy, but also trepidation and fear and
Yeah.
pain and cause for concern. And um, there's a lot happening, and it is very, very, it's just incredibly helpful to me, and I can tell for others here as well, to remember to plant our seeds and to put them in the ground, to water them, tend them together, just as this Torah portion reminds us, in fact, to be to be stewards of this creation. And thank you for modeling that for us, as always, so
Sure.
beautifully today.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Harry. Thanks
everybody.
for holding us. And thanks for everyone for the lovely supportive comments for the next month. Hope everyone stays safe and well.
Thank you.
Shabbat, and I'll see you when I'm back. Be well, everyone.
That's
Take care. Shabbat shalom.